Good morning. I'm Greg Pomerantz, and we're going to get started here as people keep going, but we've got a really great presentation, and I don't want to run out of time because I think everybody's going to really appreciate it. Welcome to EBITDA Partners monthly event. I am the marketing representative. EBITDA is a consortium of consultants of very different levels of expertise. I do marketing. Scott Plum is our master at sales and sales training. Steve Schad runs Optima Advisory, which is a fractional HRO or HR business. Courtney Taylor works at Fidelity Bank and helps small business owners with their banking needs. Adam Hennon is a partner at Olson Thielen. And Adam, while an accountant, does a tremendous amount of fractional CFO work. And who am I forgetting? Keith Schoolcraft runs one of the most wonderful managed services providers, a couple of gurus here in town. And so today we're here to talk about marketing and I hope I didn't forget anybody. Oh, I did. Jeff Redmond. Sorry, Jeff. Jeff is a lawyer by training, but he runs a breakthrough impact group, which helps small business owners really and their teams work together to grow their businesses. And I apologize if I missed out on something. But today we want to talk about how to increase sales in the B2B world. And it's been getting more difficult. And that was even before COVID. I mean, for example, how your customers want to buy has changed. Your customers' needs are changing. You know, clearly inventory has become a bigger and bigger problem for all kinds of customers, especially anybody that's in the manufacturing space. And they need to know, customers need to know your customers know more now than they ever have before because they scour the internet looking for information. Salespeople have a tougher and tougher time getting into meetings, and pricing is constantly being pushed down. I mean, there's incredible stress being put on the system. What we want to do today is teach a couple of things that will help you increase your lead flow. Our goal is to provide actionable tips that will drive leads and ultimately revenue. And yes, the funnel is an antiquated device, but that's what we're talking about, is filling the funnel with better prospects. And your tour guides, I'm going to get out of the way very quickly because I help business owners understand the marketplace, but I'm really happy to have Graham Riley here today, who's the founder of Business Social Strategies, who is helping businesses organically grow their leads. And not only leads, but the right leads that can help you grow your business. Let's just start with one basic concept here, because I think when we talk about marketing, what is it? I mean, marketing is a process of connecting your product, services, and ideas with your customers' needs. It's really about creating and maintaining that link between you and your customers. And this is where I think what Graham is doing in his business to help business owners can be incredibly impactful because it's all about your customers and your prospects. And you really need to understand who they are, why they want to buy, what they want to buy, when they want to buy it. Even though they're B2B, they shop on Amazon and they kind of like to think that they're always going to be able to buy like they're on Amazon. So you need to find the new ones, and you need to make sure that you treat your older customers, established customers, a little bit differently and a little bit better. And with that, what I want to do is stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Graham. Meet Graham, everyone. And I will let Graham, you take it from here.
Thank you very much indeed, Greg. I appreciate you, Scott, Jeff, and the rest of the EBITDA partners for putting this together. As you mentioned, we're going to be exploring the how we go about prospecting and developing our pipeline. And you just bear with me a second. In the handover, Greg, my screen stuck. So let me just try sharing again. Where there's a will, there's a way. Okay. Jason, it doesn't look like, oh, there we go. So what we're looking at doing is setting up a sales pipeline. And as we know, setting up a sales pipeline isn't an event. It's simply many little things done well over time. And for many businesses and business owners, especially the entrepreneurs, they're not going to go out of business because they don't understand accounting, they don't understand HR or IT or whatever other service that they're offering. Typically, businesses don't make it because they fail to establish a customer acquisition process that gives them this steady, constant supply of new clients. And so there are many channels when it comes to developing your sales pipeline. And today we're going to focus on LinkedIn. And very often I hear a couple of things. One is, I'm on LinkedIn all of the time, but it doesn't do anything for me. Or secondly, from business owners is, I don't do social media. Well, what I thought we'd start with is just take a look at, why am I suggesting the LinkedIn channel for developing B2B sales? The first thing to note is that LinkedIn was Microsoft's largest technology purchase in history. They paid over just shy of $26.5 billion in cash. And for anybody who's familiar with LinkedIn, then you know that it's not the technology that they were purchasing. What they were purchasing was access to decision makers. And with over 700 million profiles worldwide and around 169 million here in the US, it gives a unique opportunity to get in front of the influencers and decision makers who could affect the purchase, acquisition of your products and services. It's also worth noting that the vast majority of B2B leads across all of the social media platforms, the vast majority coming in at 80%, is coming from LinkedIn. And for people who say, well, I'm on LinkedIn, but it's not doing anything for me, LinkedIn's just a tool. The fact that you have the tool doesn't determine the quality of the outcome. It's how you're using it. And that's what we're going to take a look at. Now, many businesses will say, well, I do have a very strong web presence. So the idea for the use of LinkedIn is that you also want to use it as a platform for directing people to your website. Because once people start to take an interest in you, your organization, they want to find out more. And LinkedIn provides a great opportunity of nudging them in the right direction to go and find out more about you, what your company does, and how you have impacted. Interesting statistic that came out in May. In the US, less than 1% of people are producing content on a regular basis. And it may not seem like there's a gap in content when you go and have your LinkedIn experience, but LinkedIn is sharing that very, very few people here in the US are actually engaging with the profile for the publication of content. Why is this important? Well, it's important for a couple of reasons. All social media platforms, and LinkedIn is no different, they're looking for stickiness, or designed in a way that people become habitualized or even addicted to having their social media experience, their LinkedIn experience on a daily basis. And what feeds that activity is people going to the platform and having a great experience. And they're having a great experience because they're learning something, they're engaging, and they feel that they've got benefit for themselves and for their business. And so what that means to everyone on this call today is that if you're looking to leverage this channel, then there is certainly space, whether you're in the fractional accounting, IT, HR, whatever space you're in, there's an opportunity to be a thought leader because people aren't, your competitors aren't producing thought content and sharing content on a regular basis. So let's have some mental chiropractic, first of all, about selling on LinkedIn and driving customers. If you're in a business development role and you're tasked with driving revenues for your company, your role is to sell, but when people are engaged on the LinkedIn platform, they don't want to be sold to. And so how do you reconcile the fact you want to sell, but I don't want to be sold to? And what we're going to look at is how to establish yourself as a subject matter expert in your field. Because once you establish that you understand these are the problems that the audience that I wish to serve faces, then you start to adopt more of a consultative role. And so instead of sharing, hey, let me talk about you, let me talk about me and what I do, it becomes very focused on what is the problem, how can I solve it, why is this problem important to your business, and what are some of the ways that we can go about solving it. Now, I put at the bottom that what we have to do if we want that steady, predictable sales pipeline is to establish a rigor to how we go about building our funnel. And as creatures of habit, if we are able to adopt a system, if we practice that system over a 90-day period, then it becomes ingrained as part of our routine. Otherwise, if we don't establish that rigor, we don't put systems in place to make sure that we're doing many little things well consistently over time, then wherever you are today, that's where you'll be in 12 months from now. And so something has to change. And I heard an interesting quote a few months ago that when it comes to education, unless you actually take action on it, then it's not education, it's entertainment. And so while I'll try and be as entertaining as possible, I hope, as Greg pointed out, that we're going to give you some actionable pieces to take away with and start trying on your own profile today. So how am I going to break this down? I'm going to start with the KISS. I'm going to keep it simple. And so I see there are four main components of leveraging the LinkedIn channel. The first is setting the stage. We want to make sure that how you're representing yourself is regardless of the industry that you're in, this is the very best representation of me, which means that anybody who's visiting your profile, they're going to understand who you are as a professional, but also how do you communicate and what's your attention to detail. So the constituent parts are, we've got a stage, we've got our profile, we've got an audience, and we're going to look at the influencers and decision makers who make up your audience. And then now you've got an audience, now you've got a stage, now we're going to start engaging with content to that audience. The idea then is that as we engage with the audience with a content strategy and a campaign strategy, that people will buy our products and services. As well as people actually purchasing our services, what we're also looking for are advocates. And there was some research that came out of the UK that shared a business needs 1,000 people who understand what you do, why you do it, and how you go about doing it. So whatever business you're in, when somebody says, I'm thinking of, fill in the blank with your business, then they're thinking of you. And so how do you get this following, these advocates, these Macaulay Culkins, to promote and to advocate and to think about your business when they're faced with a specific problem? Okay, so that was very simple So we've got the stage, we've got the audience. Idea is that they buy our services and we develop advocates and fans. But let's start to break this down. And from those four, all of those components, I'm going to lean heavily into the content space because of A, restrictions of time, but B, from the statistic that I shared earlier, with less than 1% of the 169 million people who use LinkedIn in the US on a frequent basis, they're not producing content. And that's where I think our biggest opportunity lies. So our profile, this is how I'm turning up. And what I want to make sure is that, you know, in that mental chiropractic, I'd ask you to consider that LinkedIn is really just this great networking event in the cloud. And if we are to engage in that networking event, just as in real life, when we can do that again, it's how we choose to show up and how we behave. It's not the fact that we attended, but it's who we were talking to and how we went about working the crowd that determines, was that a successful networking event that led me to have a handful of business cards that I'm going to follow up with tomorrow. So first impressions count. And I'd like to offer that when it comes to B2B sales, it's no different than somebody who's interviewing for the job. If you're providing products or services, what you're doing is essentially interviewing for the role of provider for your services. Now, many people in the business development role, they configured their profile to be appropriate for their employer. So for example, if I'm a sales director or I'm a business development executive, I'm gearing my profile when I'm looking for a new job that promotes how I crush sales quota, how I'm great at prospecting, how I'm great at cold calling, all of the things that are of value to my new employer. But once I get the job, now my role is to go and start to engage with CIOs, CEOs, VPs of IT, whoever is your target audience. Now, the fact that you can crush quota or you can, you're great at cold calls or negotiations, that doesn't mean anything to your new audience. What we want to make sure is that the profile is intended to serve the audience, to buy you credibility with the audience that you wish to serve. And so right now, if you want to take a look at your profile, is it serving your current employer? Or does it speak to the skills and the talents that you and your company bring to the table for your target demographic? Now, in the on the slide, I talk about utilizing all sections. Absolutely, this includes the banner area and the profile photo. And here I'm showing what the defaults look like. Think of your LinkedIn profile photograph as your company logo. People buy from people, and having a having a pleasant, engaging photograph that has got a neutral background that shows you looking at your audience or looking into the content. It helps people form an impression of who you are before they ever met you. And what is never fails to surprise me when I'm working with clients or when I'm at in-person networking events is that people come up to you and say, it feels like I know you because I see you on LinkedIn. And for your business development team, not only are you looking for recognition of, I know who you are and what you're about, but people feel that they know, like, and trust you. Because when it comes to the appointment setting, which we'll cover at a later point, it's a lot easier to book an appointment with somebody and they feel they know, like, and trust you versus they don't know you from Adam. Now, I'm going to touch upon metrics, and I'm leveraging our friend Jeff Redmond here. He was kind enough to say, absolutely, go ahead and use my details. Couple of things to note when it comes to your profile. In terms of the many little things done well, wouldn't it be great if you had some feedback to understand, well, how am I doing? How am I creating this awareness? Are people engaging with me? And so there are two key things to note. One is how many people are looking at me, and what I would call a typical LinkedIn profile gets anywhere from 100 to 200 views. And also the number of times that you're appearing in a search. Because just like a website, it's only serving you when people are on it and engaging and looking at your content. No different from your LinkedIn profile. There's a couple of problems that we're going to be solving here is I can't do business with you unless I'm aware of you, and I won't take your call or set an appointment with you unless I value what you have to offer over and above the competition. So how are we inserting ourselves into people's attention span? And what are we saying when we've got it? I mentioned growing your audience. Before we engage with our audience, remember, we're in the business of leaving a great first impression. We set up the profile so that it's optimized. Not only it's visually compelling, but it's also friendly to the LinkedIn algorithms. And as you see, the red, amber, and green, the red indicates this is what I was typically doing in my LinkedIn experience. The amber is we're setting the stage, we're building out our profile to make sure that it's commensurate with who we are in real life, because so many people understate or underrepresent their value. And when you do that, then that's basically you're leaving opportunity on the table. And then once you have your profile set up, now just like a restaurant on opening night, you're ready for prime time. That's when we're looking to invite and start to engage with the influencers and decision makers to fill up your connections. So I've set the profile up. I've started to use the connection process to find the influencers and the decision makers. Here's what I would recommend when it comes to, on that one final point about growing your audience. Start off with having your profile visit your intended audience. Then a few days later, follow them. A few days later, then send a polite and professional invitation to connect. Have it as a custom message. Don't just send it to them without any narrative as to why you want to connect with them. And then a few days later, send a polite and professional and courteous thank you. The reason for this is when somebody receives a connection request, there are 5 options that the recipient has, and only one of them is good. So the first is that, yes, they accept your connection, which is great. That's what you wanted. The second is that it simply sits in their queue and they are ignoring it. The third option is they actually choose to tell LinkedIn they're ignoring you. Fourth option is not only do they tell LinkedIn that they're ignoring you, but they also say, I don't know who Graham is. And they also could go nuclear and say that I'd like to block, or I'm going to report Graham's connection request as spam. So that's why I'm a big advocate of the polite, professional, and courteous outreach, because of the way that LinkedIn tracked when you reach out to people, are they saying yes to the connection? So now I've got an audience, I've got a great profile. Now it comes to sharing the content. And what I'd offer is there's a great temptation to say, this is what we do as a company. And I ask you to check that enthusiasm to share that and focus on two things. Positioning your content in the gap between where your customers are today and where they wish to be. And two things motivate people when it comes to making a change in behavior. And you're looking to help them change behavior by the addition of your products and services. And so what drives people are pain points and outcomes. Pain and outcomes. And we're going to focus on positioning our content right in that gap that addresses the pain and affords them the outcome, or allows them to get to the outcomes that they're looking for. So how do we go about thinking about our content? Because if people aren't producing content, and I'm going to make the decision that I'm going to leverage the LinkedIn channel to drive new opportunities, what I'd like to put in place for my company is, how am I thinking about the content and how am I structuring it so that in those 90 days, I become more accomplished and more effective in what I'm doing. And so we certainly want to have people see our content, and by driving your connections, as you're adding new connections, as you share content, that means that your first level connections are going to become aware of what you're sharing. We want it to talk to the pain points. What is their current situation? What are the things that they can do to change that situation to get them the outcomes? But also talk to how you know, like, I apologize. I appear to have gone on mute. Jeff or Greg, at what point did my system decide to mute me?
I would say no more than 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. So in 30 seconds, that's afforded everybody the opportunity to read what I have on the slide. So what I'm going to call out is the pain points, the outcomes, the testimonials of how others have benefited from your services. That's a transformation. That's the example of your results. But what I'd offer is allow your perspective and personalities to come through. We've got Memorial Day, Thanksgiving. We've got the holiday season. We've got, we've got many opportunities to allow the warmth of your personality, your character to come through. And what we call those are know, like, and trust posts. And we'll look at some examples of this, because very often companies will tell you people are our greatest asset, and then go about their marketing based upon this is what the company does. And for anybody who's in business development who wants to grow their personal pipeline, then sharing a little bit about yourself is no different than when you're at a networking event or you're meeting somebody for the first time. You check in with them, you ask them about their interests, how their day is going. That form of check-in can be accomplished on LinkedIn by sharing content that gives people insight into who you are and what you're about. Okay. Okay. So when it comes to your posts and articles, What we want to make sure is that we have a structure, because what we want is our content to convert to opportunities. So how are we structuring it? And then what we want to make sure is, does it have stopping power, staying power, and engagement? And what I mean by this is that when we log into LinkedIn, we don't go directly to our profile. What we're presented with is the home page. And what we tend to do is, when we face with our LinkedIn home screen, is we start to skim, scan, and scroll through the content until something catches our eye. And so what we're doing is we're effectively competing for people's attention, and we only have a few seconds to do that. And so now I want them to stop, and I then want to have an opportunity for curiosity to kick in, and people wanting to see more. And then once they've seen something, then we want engagement, because what we want the LinkedIn algorithms to do is to promote your content to the widest possible audience that we can get. And that's what we're going to take a look at right now. Structure. We want to make sure that it is, first of all, easily read, and we're not presenting people with huge blocks of text. And so right at the very top, what we want to do is to have that stopping power and pose a question with somebody. And so the idea is that we don't share everything, but we just give people an opportunity to pose and hit that see more option. And the structure then is, we're talking about, you know, are you facing these problems? Because what we want to have our audience come away with and shape their impression of us is, Graham, you know, fill in your name. They understand what problems I face every day. And then, you know, these are the outcomes. Would you like to have these things happen to you? Well, yes, I would. And then how has somebody benefited? And then that's where we've got a quote. We don't just leave it there. We want them to have a click, and we want them to engage further. And so rather than assuming that they're going to follow up, we give them an opportunity to take that next step and either directly message us or click on a link, which will further their journey in understanding of who we are and what we're about. And we're also going to leverage our the hashtags, which we'll get into a little later. So this is the basic structure. Stopping power is curiosity. And what we're looking to do is we're looking to try different things. Because the more we understand about who our audience is, what messaging resonates with our audience, the greater our ability then to do an assessment, again, using the metrics at the end of every month, and say, this is what we need to stop doing. Nobody engaged with that. This is what we need to start doing, and this is what we need to keep doing. And so when it comes to your content, instead of it being a, well, where do I start? By focusing on the pain points and the outcomes appropriate for your industry and service, and then how do you message those? How do you catch people's eye? That starts to refine the process so that when you are producing content, there's a direct correlation between your activity and outcomes of booked meetings, booked appointments for the audience that you want to have those appointments with. Staying power retention. LinkedIn classifies a view on your content as 3 seconds. And so what we're looking to do is to meet that 3 seconds and then earn the right to have 5 or 10 seconds, 5 minutes, building up to now somebody's raised their hand and say, I'd be open to having a half-hour call with you. And so the temptation is too much too soon. Think of attention as a wedge. And what you're looking to do is earn the right in those 2 or 3 seconds to move along. And you gain people's attention. And what drives that then is curiosity. So is your content having people pause, want to find out more, and curiosity drives them to having a meeting with you? Does it get a response? So when you share a piece of LinkedIn content, LinkedIn does not share it with your entire first level connections. It shares it with a sample of people. And what it's looking for is, are people responding and engaging with this content? And within the first couple of hours, it is key that your content gets engagement, because what it's doing is it is earning the right to be seen by more people. Remember, LinkedIn is looking to give people a great user experience, which means that it wants to be delivering content that is most meaningful for that particular user experience. And so as your content gets more likes, as more people comment, as it reshares, the more that happens, the larger the audience gets. I shared that we were looking at know, like, and trust posts. What I typically see is when companies are just talking about the company, they'll get a few thousand views on their content. When the content follows the structure that I've just been talking about, the pain points and the outcomes, then we typically get 3,000 to perhaps 5,000 or 6,000. But what I've seen very often is when somebody shares a little bit about themselves, gives some insights into the person behind the business, that's where we really see a lot of engagement with our know, like, and trust posts. And again, the idea isn't that it's robotic. I'm just posting things out there. Your content strategy has to be well thought out, but a bit like riding a bike, once you start to get momentum, it becomes easier to steer. And very often I'll be asked, well, how often should I be posting? And if I said 5 times a week, very often people fall over faint and think, well, I've been doing it less than once a month, or about once a month, or once a week. So that seems like a tall order. The recommendation, though, is 3 to 5 pieces of content. And once you start to build momentum, you start to see from your content what people are responding to, and that then helps you tailor future pieces of content. I mentioned 90 days because if you have this rigor of 3 to 5 pieces of content every single week versus the 1 a week or once a month, you're finding out far more about your audience in 90 days that would take somebody else doing it once a week, literally years, to come up with what is appropriate for their audience. So is it hard work? Yes. And at no point have I ever said that this is easy. But what I'm sharing here are best practices that I've seen work time and time again. And not only here in the US, but in UK, in Europe, this way of getting people to pause with your content, to engage with your content with a meaningful call to action, positioning your content in the gap between people where they are today and where they want to be, is working. And so it's not what should I try? These are the best practices. I mentioned hashtags. Hashtags are a way that LinkedIn allows users to customize their content, to customize their feed. And ideally, you want to place anywhere between 3 to 5 hashtags in each piece of your content. And we want to make sure that they have a very large following, because the more, again, it helps the system present your content to as large an audience as possible if there are more people following the hashtags. And for everyone on today's call, we do have the top 100 hashtags sorted by followers. Now, if you do have a unique company hashtag, for hashtag Graham Riley, but nobody is following hashtag Graham Riley, it doesn't make sense when you first start out to have hashtag Graham Riley, hashtag Graham, hashtag Riley. It doesn't make sense to have those in there that there isn't a follower, because we want to make sure that our content isn't seen by our competitors or our colleagues. What we want to understand is what hashtags are our audience following. Not sure what they're following? Then go and take a look at their profile, take a look at their activity, and then take a look at what posts or articles that they've engaged with. And then take a look at what hashtags are inside of those posts or articles. And what you'll start to see is a trend building up. And so, for example, if your demographic is CFOs or CIOs, then go and take a look at their profiles, take a look at what they're engaging with, and then make notes of those hashtags, because you want to place those hashtags strategically inside of your content. And you certainly don't want to be putting hashtags in that just get your content in front of your competition. So what am I posting? When am I posting it? And when? One of the things that we've seen has some stopping power are PDF slides, things that create some movement versus a dynamic or static picture. And a couple of years ago, as close as 2020, videos were doing this. What we're seeing now is animated PDFs have the ability to cause people to pause when they're skim scanning and scrolling. What's the recommendation for posting? Daily, 5 days a week. One of the things that LinkedIn is doing is it is rewarding the content providers. Remember, I shared that less than 1% of the US users are sharing content. So LinkedIn is going to reward you, in quotes, by if you post on Monday, what it will think is that you're sharing something, you've got engagement with that post. And so when you post something on Tuesday, you get that halo effect of that initial sampling is going to be larger than the first, because what LinkedIn's doing is it wants to reward you for providing content into the onto the platform. Now, timing. So if you have got your content, you know what you're going to say. When am I going to say it? For us here in the US, especially if you're serving across the country, aim to have your content go out at 7 a.m. on Eastern time. Most people are having their LinkedIn experience at the start of the day in the morning. And so, or over the lunch break. And so by starting at 7 a.m., you're still in the morning break when our colleagues and prospects are logging in California. So that's the best time. So we've got slides, we're doing it daily, following the structure that I talked about, and either we're getting up early and here in the Midwest, or we start to use some automation tools so that this can take place automatically, and now we can just focus then on the content creation side of things and allow the systems or the tools to then go and post at the appropriate times. Assessing the results. So again, a view is 3 seconds, and this is only for the views that have come from your feed. So, for example, if you get a lot of people resharing your content, let's say that you get 5 reshares, that they get credit for sharing your content. And so if your content received 10,000 views and 5 people share it, then they may get anywhere from a few hundred to tens of thousands of views, but you don't have insight into what their totals are. And so it doesn't let you off the hook for having content that engages people, that prompts them to share. But that's the ideal, is that your content becomes a reputable source that others are open to sharing. Again, if you drill down into who's taking a look at your content, what sort of engagement, you're able to then use the data. And this is why I'm a big fan of the metrics. This is how you start to use the data of what do we need to stop doing, start doing, and keep doing. Obviously, what are the characteristics? What are the things that you did that got engagement with 10 or 20 or 30,000 views than what you did when you only got a few hundred views? All of these are variables, but again, when you're sharing at least 5 times a week, you're able to gather this information pretty quickly. I started by sharing that people buy into people first, so lead with the business development team's subject matter expertise, not with the company. But what does happen as you're sharing this content from your individual profile, people engage with it. What does well on your profiles, then you can move over to your company page, because when people have that curiosity, they'll see your content, they'll go and check your profile, work your way down your profile, and most likely they're then going to click on the company page and go and check that out. Who is it that Graham works for? And what we're seeing here, again, this is inside of the company page. What we're seeing is this steady bottom left to upper right growth in people coming and checking out the content. Now, without content, it's hard for people to react. And if they go there, they're not going to stay. But as your content grows, the audience grows of visitors, so does people reacting to that content. So people have visited, they've liked what they've seen, and the goal then is that they're following you. And so now there's this steady cadence of 100, 200 people every month that is now following your company page. They've taken that step to self-elect and to engage with your company, in addition to engaging with the profile that got them there in the first place. So how long should I be creating content for? You've mentioned 90 days, Graham. What I'd offer is you create content as long as you want sales leads, as long as you want an opportunity to sell. This isn't a set and forget, because if you leave 2 weeks, a month between postings, after you've created this energy around your profile, you're starting to get leads, you think, oh, I'm going to deal with these leads, then what will happen is people will stop engaging with you. And then you'll work that current batch of opportunities through to conclusion. And then where are the next leads coming from? Again, if you don't have that cadence, then the momentum is going to come out of your program. So that's why the first 90 days to systemize and put some rigor in place is absolutely key. Your campaign strategy. I'm sure that just about everyone on this call has received a connection request with a, hey, let me tell you all about me. And I don't even know you. I've just received a connection request, and this is way too much information. So I shared in our approach, or our best practice is to follow these steps. Because what we're doing is we're having multiple touch points with our prospective clients versus coming in cold. So we're sharing content, but we've also had a campaign strategy where this is my profile, with my digital ambassador, engaging with the individuals in a current company or a category of people, all of the CEOs or CFOs in Minnesota. This is how I'm choosing to engage with them. It's a great temptation to talk about all of the things that you do. And for 90 days, what I'm offering is you just have the one strategy. You focus on, I want to position my product or service with these specific individuals in these sorts of companies in this industry. And what I'm going to talk to is their pain. I'm going to be personal and engage them as people. And I'm going to talk to the outcomes. And I'm going to apply this rigor consistently. Very often people will tell me, well, Graham, we do all of these things and we want to get it out there. And so what comes across in the messaging is we do this, we do this, we do this, stop me if anything interests you. The idea is that I gain the appointment first by all of the mechanisms that we've been talking about. And then once I've landed that appointment, then it's up to the business development professional then to land that opportunity and then expand in, we also do these other things. Allow the other things to be introduced verbally, because there's no point in sharing things with people that they just don't have an interest in. Don't do this. So this gentleman, as an example, reached out to me, hope all's going well. It's a connection request. And then within an hour or so, it's all about, would you like to learn more? Let's talk. It's too much too soon. And so if things turn you off to somebody with how they're behaving, which is essentially how their LinkedIn profile is behaving, then you can go a long way in your business development efforts by simply not doing those things. So not too much too soon, polite, professional, courteous first, and then engaging with content and sharing things that are of interest to them. Another thing that I'd point out is use your notifications, because people buy from people. I've talked about being very personable. When somebody has a promotion, a birthday, a work anniversary, don't just use the canned messages that are inside of LinkedIn. Customize it in a way that it feels authentic to how you would communicate and connect with a friend, wishing them a happy birthday or congratulating them. When you take that approach, it is far more successful in eliciting a response than some messages that you might have spent hours trying to craft. Don't let it all be it's all business. Be very personable, and notifications is a great way of letting you know what's going on with your prospects. So We've moved at a great rate through this, but to sum up is we've set the stage with our profile. It's the best representation of us and our company on the company page. Bums on seats. Our first level connections aren't the people that we served in the past, our former colleagues, our friends, our acquaintances from the companies that we worked with in our history. What we're looking to do is to have our first level connections be just full of the people we want to serve moving forward. Again, the cadence, the experience that they have, people are forming impressions by what you're saying. And so if you want to be known as a subject matter expert in a particular field, then show thought leadership by talking about it. If you're silent, then you're not in the business of shaping people's perceptions, and you're giving no opportunity for them to react to you. And then once you start to have engagement with people, then you just follow your normal sales triage process. This isn't selling. This is the marketing to start to fill that pipeline that Greg spoke to earlier. We track all of the metrics associated with an account, and we know from sales that activity drives results. And so what I'm showing here is the activity on a client's profile. And as you can see, every single month, the profile became more active. Okay, it's becoming more active, but what's happening next, Graham? Well, the audience of the people that they wish to serve is growing. And so now, instead of it being a cold email or cold call, you're actually doing the vast majority of your prospecting inside of your first level connections. And if you're wondering what that dip is in between April and May for this particular client, this is a plug for using Sales Navigator. LinkedIn.com, when you search, is not a reliable tool. And that's why Sales Navigator is our recommendation to get the most out of this platform. Okay, lots of activity. Your audience has grown, Graham, but what's the bottom line? And here's a quote from one of our clients. Sally called me in 2020 in April, and she said, Graham, we are in the biotech space. We've got products and services that can help with COVID. We're in a pandemic. My phone is not ringing. And so we went through this 90-day process. And at the end of the process, in that first month, she had 97 people who'd raise their hand and say, I'd be open for a conversation. Each month after that, there was anywhere from 50 to 70 people who had raised their hand and said, I want to have a conversation. And that's where we move out of the marketing into now how are we triaging. And she ended up selling her company and not retiring yet, but she was very, very happy with the results. And I just squeaked to the bar at 9 o'clock. So thank you, Greg. Back to you.
So, Graham, as you know, I just think what you were doing is different from everybody else on LinkedIn. And I'm really happy that you got a chance to share it today.
Thank you.
We do have some questions that have come in. And for those of you that can still stick around, please do. We will be providing a video, or the recording will be posted on the EBITDA Partners website, so you will be able to get access to it if you have to leave. But let me just go through a couple of quick questions here. One came in early on: is poorly written content or poorly produced video better than nothing at all?
If you know that it is poorly produced or it's poor content, then don't put it out there.
Okay.
If you know what good looks like, that's what you want to start to share. Okay.
Next question that came in is, How often do you suggest people post on LinkedIn?
Daily.
Okay, really?
Daily, but that's why I said start with 3 times a week and then move to 5 times a week. You've got to make a start, and if you're only posting once a week versus 5 times a week, a month and a half has gone by in learning about your audience and what resonates with your audience versus you've had all of that learning within the first 5 days.
Okay. A little bit tangential, but how important and is there value in commenting on another post?
I would say that it's of tremendous value. If a post is receiving a lot of activity from the people that you wish to serve, then commenting allows you to demonstrate your subject matter expertise and your thoughts. Even commenting and recognizing when a competitor is doing well. If a competitor of yours has just done a great job, then recognize them from that. That speaks a lot to your character.
Okay, so going down that path a little bit about character, it's like, can you talk about negative consequences of a bad post?
A bad post. I would offer that a bad post would something that would be of a political or a religious nature. If it's about your business and you feel that it didn't perform well, then following the guidelines that I've been talking about, what you want to do is that post analysis of why didn't it perform well, and then knowing what not to do is as useful as knowing what to do moving forward.
Okay, I guess last question here. How long does it take for LinkedIn to recognize your audience has changed when switching industries? Being that algorithms drive who sees your posts.
Right. It can change within the first few weeks, provided that you are behaving and engaging with the new audience that you wish to serve, which is so intricately tied into, well, am I posting once a week, Graham, or once a month? Then there's nothing for the algorithms to react to.
Right. Okay, well, everyone, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. As I said earlier, I think what Graham is doing is different from anybody else that's working on LinkedIn, at least in the Twin Cities right now. And I appreciate, Graham, you taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us all, because I think there's a lot of great tips here. As I said earlier, we will do 2 things. 1, we will post the recording on our website, and 2, we will get a copy of Graham's slides out to everyone. So, because I know there's a lot of information in the slides, and that way you'll be able to study them. And you can see Graham's contact information is right here on the last slide. So if you have questions, please feel free to follow up with Graham. I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any and all questions.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Again, thanks to EBITDA partners, Greg, Jeff, Scott, Angie, and the rest of the team. Thank you very much.
So thanks, guys. Everybody have a good day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.